I think it's being overlooked how important Auburn's depth will be this season.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. I am your host, Zac Blackerby. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's a happy hour edition of the show. We jumped on with Ben Taylor on his show, Auburn Opelika This Morning on News Talk WANI. We talk about how crucial Auburn's depth will be this season, as well as what else do we want to see from Auburn this fall camp? Here we go.
In specific, we're going to talk football. And the reason we're going to talk football is because, number one, everybody is pumped up. Everybody's excited. Fan Day, apparently, according to the university, that's the unofficial start for them that took place this past weekend whenever they came in to visit. I call it SEC Media Days is the unofficial start for probably us media people out there of college football season. But, Zach, how important, and I say this is a two-part question, how important is Auburn's depth specifically at the running back position? And I will tell you why I'm asking you that here momentarily.
Yeah. I mean, I assume it has to do with some of the storylines, unfortunate storylines of what's happened throughout the conference. But, I mean, yeah, of course it's going to be crucial. And it's going to be interesting to see what the total market share looks like when you talk about Jarquez Hunter, Damari Austin, and Jeremiah Cobb. Because I think there's this almost assumption that since they're all three good and all three highly touted and all three discussed, that there's going to be almost a balance between the three of them where it's going to be kind of an equal share of the touches. I don't think that's going to be true. I think it's going to be Jarquez Hunter, clear RB1. And I think RB2, there's going to be two RB2s essentially with Jeremiah Cobb and Damari Austin. They might be situational depending on how they want to be used or how they want to attack the defense, even though they do have a lot of similarities. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's huge. And we've talked about the depth now at running back, at wide receiver, at offensive line, at defensive line, at linebacker. And I think you can make the case at safety. Corner, I don't think they're super deep at, but they've got a lot of talent there. But all in all, like this is a deep roster. Auburn hasn't had this in a while.
And national people are jumping on board because Jarquez Hunter's name has been floated around out there on some watch list and guys to look out for in the upcoming season. I think people forget, we as Auburn fans don't forget, and Auburn media don't forget. Everybody goes, why do you need the depth? Well, if you remember, Hunter was suspended at the first part of last year for some off the field issues. And so Auburn needed that in the running back room. And that's where you see like Cobb or Austin was able to step up and do. Petit was with us at that point in time as well. So there's a reason you need those three backs. It really more backs than that on the roster, but those three main backs, because told you before, the reason I love this scenario, it reminds me of the Ronnie Brown, Cadillac Williams, Brandon Jacobs days when that happened. And the reason being is because Cadillac was by far RB1, even though Ronnie Brown was just as good a back, in my opinion. And you saw that when Cadillac went down before the bowl game. And you had Cadillac go in there, get the defense tired. Ronnie Brown came in there and Brandon Jacobs. And while these guys have got their hands on their knees, they're running over people left and right. And it made it easy for the run game to establish the line of scrimmage, even on into the third and fourth quarter, because of that depth. If they didn't have that depth, that would have never happened in an undefeated season.
Yeah. I mean, so obviously it's important. And think about all the games of the last 5 years where Auburn had it, then something unfortunate happened in the fourth quarter and they just kind of let it slip away. I think that has to do with, on both sides of the football, Auburn having to play guys 60, 70, 80 snaps a game, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Running backs a little bit different because Auburn has had their share of running backs for sure. But yeah, I mean, going back to last year, I mean, Damari Austin was injured last year. I mean, he messed his shoulder up. And so, he missed time. Jarquez, even coming off of that one game suspension, he didn't look himself until 3 or 4 weeks into the season. Right. It kind of seemed like he was battling something too. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's important. I mean, Jarquez Hunter plays a position that's very, very physical, obviously. And so, I mean, we've seen some big headlines throughout the SEC of of folks losing some really talented running backs season. And, knock on wood, but, Auburn's been pretty fortunate with health so far this year.
Well, and that's the second part of my question. The reason I bring that up is the Texases and the Oklahomas of the world realizing now what it means, getting an early taste of what it means to be in the Southeastern Conference, because you and I have talked about this before, even face to face when we've talked football, is there's the SEC schedule is a different grind to me than a Big Ten schedule or, a Pac-12 schedule or ACC schedule, because they still got everybody goes, well, you got Vanderbilt. I'm like, I get that. But still, you've also, even Arkansas, who's supposed to be terrible, still going to put up a fight amongst people. So Texas and Oklahoma, Texas losing their running back due to his ACL, that's what they're going to endure 5 games into the season. When they play 3 conference games, they're going to be like, holy moly, it doesn't let up at this point.
Yeah, and he's good. I mean, he's good. I mean, you talk about a team that is that's preparing themselves to go on another playoff run. And I mean, this hurts you. I mean, is their offense still going to be elite? It should be, with Sark at the helm. They should be fine, but this does impact things for sure. So we'll see. Does that have to do anything with the week-to-week grind? Probably not. I mean, I don't think they're preparing for the season any different than they would have last year when they were still in the Big 12. But will the weekly grind be different? Sure. And, Texas folks, and I'm glad that they did it, but, with them beating Alabama, it's yeah, sure, that's great. That's great that you beat Alabama, but that was your Super Bowl. You focused on that all off season, and then you were able to focus on that in the season as well, because the rest of your schedule outside of Oklahoma was kind of a cakewalk compared to what you're about to go through. And now Texas isn't going to get the brunt of it like Oklahoma is. Oklahoma's schedule's brutal. Oklahoma's got a chance to go start 0-3 in the conference, and we'll see where they are, mentally after that. So we'll see exactly what that looks like. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be different. I can't wait for them to say that it's not different. That's going to be fun. That's going to be really, really fun, because that's going to be the case. But yeah, sure, it's certainly going to be a part of it. No question.
I think that they do that maybe one of the first couple of games. That we'll hear that, oh, this is exactly what we thought it was. It's no different. And I want to hear them say that if they are lucky enough to make it through to the SEC championship. I want to hear them say that week 9, week 10, that after the bumps and bruises, and that's why I bring up depth. I mean, there's when you've got as many running backs in the room as Auburn has, if somebody does go down, you don't want the offense to have to change the way it has its approach. And I don't think you're going to get that with Auburn, as I think if Jarquez gets a nagging ankle injury or a shoulder issue comes back to Damari, I think that they still don't change the offense because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Auburn has 3 really good backs, but what happens if one of them does miss an extended amount of time, like Deshaun Jackson get more touches, which, a big chunk of the Auburn fan base loves Sean Jackson. And I think he's solid at the spot where he is. So, we'll see what that role looks like. But yeah, I mean, from a depth standpoint, Auburn should be in a better spot than a lot of schools in the conference.
Especially and you mentioned the receivers just a minute ago. We've talked about them before. It seems like after Fan Day and after that scrimmage, I think people are finally realizing that you've got names out there of guys that didn't get to go through spring that all of a sudden are shining even in early fall camp. Because you said it just a minute ago with Jarquez, he didn't look himself. It's going to be tough for a true freshman to come in and just hit the ground running at 100% right away.
Yeah. Yeah. But they've done it so far. I mean, you look at Cam, you look at Perry, you look at Malcolm Simmons and Bryce Kane. These guys have hit the ground running for sure. And then even guys on the defensive side of the ball, we've heard nothing but great things about Jay Crawford, the cornerback. We've heard nothing but great things about Malik Blockton on the defensive line. Of Morris Williams is one of those edge guys. So Auburn had a special class this past year, and now they're all true freshmen. And Auburn's going to expect a lot out of these true freshmen. We saw this last year with Connor Liu and with Keldrick Falk, and now you're going to have a younger team. It's like you've got this youth movement, and then you've got all these seniors, and then next year you kind of see like, oh wow, Auburn's going to have a ton of talent next year, even with guys leaving. So it's been fun to watch. I've been pleasantly surprised. I was kind of consistent over the summer of I think Malcolm Simmons is going to be very good, but I don't know if he's going to be a part of the offense this year. this past weekend made me change my mind on that, which is a great thing for Auburn. And so now you look at these young guys potentially pushing some of these older guys that you brought in via the portal to play right away. These coaches have some decisions to make, and that's exactly what they want to be. They want to be in that spot where it's like, okay, we've got two really talented players, and we've got to pick one of them. And that goes back to depth, because the one you don't pick can also be part of your depth. But we're having conversations about this roster that we haven't had about an Auburn roster in a hot minute.
Speaking of expectations, why don't we talk about that momentarily?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. That, and of course, what else do we want to see from fall camp? All that's coming up on this happy hour edition of Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Ben, can you imagine wagering anywhere other than our friends at FanDuel?
Other than FanDuel?
Yep.
Nope.
Makes me mad to think about. Don't want to do that.
You don't get to duel the fans, though. You have to make wagers.
That's true. That is true. Hey, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Imagine going into a sports book and there not being something there for you every day, all summer long. I can't do it. I can't do it at all. So head over to FanDuel.com. Check out Auburn's win total at 7.5. Still, I'm shocked that hasn't moved up yet. As all the hype hit the over. I'm with you, Ben Taylor. I'm with you. Head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and the Locked On Podcast Network. As far as things I want to see from Auburn for the rest of camp, I guess this is going to be like a running back bit that you and I are doing, but I do want to kind of see them pop off in the running game a little bit. And I don't know how much of that we're going to be able to see. Maybe it's in a future scrimmage and we just hear reports of it, but I'm not concerned about it, Ben, because of the way Auburn ran the football on the field last season. But we've seen two public scrimmages this year. One was A-Day. They were not able to really run the football. And then one was not public, but we all kind of got to see a lot of it on this past weekend. And Auburn had a hard time running the football. Now, it did seem like the emphasis was more of like, can we pass it? Because that's the part of this game plan that we've got to develop as a team and as a program is this passing offense. But it would be nice to kind of get that affirmation of, okay, yes, this team can run the football still. I'm not concerned about it, but it would be nice to see.
How much of it, though, this past weekend would you say would be, as always, usually the defense is ahead of the offense? So maybe they were in places that also, I'm pretty sure Freeze probably dumbed it down quite a bit.
Yes.
Just because he doesn't want anything on tape. So did all that lead to the lack of running game, or is there a concern going into the first couple of weeks of the season that maybe this offensive line is not what we thought it was?
Yeah, I don't think there's a concern there. I do think all of those things you just said are tied together. It's super vanilla. They're not going to do anything interesting when there's that many people watching. There's a lot of folks with On to Victory and with donors and media was there as well. So like, there's no reason to do too much. I'm actually surprised they had a scrimmage that had that many people there. I mean, it almost seems like a wasted scrimmage. I don't fully get that. Maybe there was some kind of politics and fundraising there. Who knows? But to me, I was a little surprised at how many people had access to that scrimmage. Normally there's one or two, and it's kind of like families, and that's it that's able to come. And this one was more than that. So we'll see. I mean, Hugh Freeze knows what he's doing. He's not going to like waste the fall practice. So I'm sure they still got some stuff out of it. And it may have just been to say, hey, like here's what we got coming up. We've got Malcolm Simmons. We've got Bryce Kane. Perry Thompson had only one official catch, but he had moments that kind of popped with, some special catches that were just out of bounds. So I'm not concerned about the lack of a rushing attack, but I will be if they don't get it going, let's say by let's say against Cal, the second game of the year. If they aren't able to run the ball against Cal, which they weren't really able to do it successfully last year, they got to do it at home this year. To me, if they're not able to run it against Cal, I'll be concerned.
I think that things will change in the conference this year as far as what we see, because I think that Auburn will have a distinct advantage now that wide receiver room is as big as it is. because it seemed like a lot of people kind of cheated up on Auburn last year to stop the run, and I don't know that they're going to be allowed to do that this year. Also, I firmly believe that one reason you didn't see a lot out of the running game this past Saturday, and this is just my own personal opinion, is because of the Texas injury. I think Hugh Freeze wanted to be like, we're not losing a running back on let me just call it what it is on my end, a rich person scrimmage, because that's what was all there in the stands was media and the people that are donating a lot of money to the program. And so I think that had something to do with it. Once he read that and read, injury reports from around the league, he was like, that doesn't need to be us, especially in front of everybody.
Yeah, he talked about that at a presser too. Like, I mean, it sounds like it spooked him a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I don't blame. Like, if Auburn lost Jarquez Hunter, that would be a big deal. That would be a huge, it'd be devastating. It would be absolutely devastating. Nothing against Damari and Jeremiah Cobb, but it's just like you need to achieve all the things you want to achieve this year. You need Jarquez Hunter to be able to carry the football for you. So yeah, I'm certainly there with you.
You mentioned it during the break, 7.5. I firmly like that line. I'm hitting the over on that. I've said now that I would even venture to say 9 wins is attainable, 10 if you count the bowl game, because I think they could get to double digits. I think that would be enormous for this staff and for this team if they were to do that by the time bowl season rolls around.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, especially if you go 9-3, which I think is a stretch. I think there's a big difference between 8-4 and 9-3, but I think they can do it. But if they do go 9-3, that bowl game becomes very important. Because you want to be able to say you won 10 games. That's a big deal. It's a big deal, especially if you're carrying a top 5 recruiting class into that bowl game. You want to kind of, seal the year off with an exclamation mark. But the 9-3 thing and 8-4 thing is interesting because I had Spencer McLaughlin, host of Locked On College Football, on, and we kind of did his predict the schedule type thing. He's doing that on his show for several teams. And he picked A&M to beat Auburn in Jordan-Hare. And then I also saw JD Pickell predict. He put up a short where he was predicting A&M schedule. And on 3, he has A&M beating Auburn. So those are 2 national folks this week that I've seen pick A&M over Auburn. And I was just a little surprised by that. Because to me, the 2 big games at home that Auburn has are Oklahoma and Texas A&M. And it's like, if you split those, you're probably 8-4. If you win both of those, you've got a real shot at 9-3. You've got to win one of the road games at that point. It's like, can you beat Kentucky or can you beat Missouri at their place? And I don't think Auburn loses both of those games. I think they probably split those. And so I've just been surprised at this late surge of attention on Texas A&M, but we do see this love for A&M every offseason. Maybe this is just this year's version of that.
Yeah, and I've told you, I think Auburn will go on the road and upset somebody that they're not supposed to win against. I don't know if that's Missouri. I don't think that that's going to be Alabama or Georgia, just based on trends in history and what you see those guys are bringing back from last year. So be interesting to see. You're right. The 8 and the 8-4, just what you mentioned just a minute ago, the 8-4 conversation becomes a talking point at the end of the season because there's a big difference between double-digit wins and just 9 total wins on the season, in my opinion, and especially with the history of bowl games that Auburn has had over the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much upside with this roster. And I mean, we're all booging right now because we're all seeing all these good things coming out of camp. So, well, I mean, we'll see if it all comes together, but yeah, super excited for the squad.
How can they find you, bud?
Yeah, please like the video. Please like any video on Locked On Auburn and subscribe to the channel. Locked On Auburn available every day on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Ben Taylor, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
News Talk WANI. We're live every single morning, Monday through Friday. So you can find that at aunetwork.com and click on the WANI logo, or check out some Braves today, man, as they finally pulled out a squeaker as of late, which after a 7-game losing streak they needed. We talk a lot about that as far as going to Braves Today, bravestoday.com. Also some written work there as well.
Yep. Please like the video again. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.